Hey everybody, welcome to the Student Loan Planner Podcast. It's Travis. Megan and I are doing this live at a conference, and I thought, we'd only have about 20 minutes to talk, so I just thought it would be cool to riff about the current state of student loans, where things are at right now, and then maybe talk a little bit about the future state of student loans. And we're going to focus on, obviously our folks in the professional and graduate school space for the most part.
We've been talking about that a lot as a group at this conference, so it'll be fun to give you a peek under the curtain.
So current state right now, we have people waiting around forever for PSLF buyback. That's a big thing because everybody had a year of the save forbearance where they were at $0 a month payments, or a lot of people did, right? So that's a big focus. But then also I think what's going to be even more interesting is this IBR payment calculation they're doing right now, because they're trying to figure out basically how do we assess how much credit somebody should have because the IDR account adjustment happened, right?
Towards the longer term forgiveness.
Right.
PSLF, interestingly, PSLF is getting processed. We're seeing some PSLF forgiveness cases come through in our Facebook groups and folks emailing us saying that they got PSLF, they've seen their green ribbons, right? So that's exciting. But the IBR forgiveness, longer term forgiveness, we haven't seen any of that in it's been 6 months.
It makes sense because there's a mechanism for PSLF forgiveness where you have a application that tracks how much credit people actually have towards, getting it
PSLF
discharged.
Payment tracker.
Right. So that didn't get undone from the PSLF waiver era. So all that credit just got put in transparently for people to see. And then now they have it, it's there. But with the Biden administration, last second, they did the payment count tracker. And that was based off of the IDR account adjustment rules.
Yes.
But we saw a lot of mistakes with that. We saw a lot of people get too much credit, not enough.
I was going to say it was good and bad mistakes. Some people had a lot more credit than we thought. And we're like, that's a little...
This doesn't make sense. We can't calculate how they calculated this.
Yes. And then some people had way too less, not enough credit. And we're trying to figure that out too. So yes, Department of Ed, it looks like, is going back and like you said, is doing their own counting, which could be good and bad too.
Well, I think what's going to happen is they're going to come out with what they think everybody's payment counts are, and they're going to also be wrong, right? A lot of them are going to be incorrect, and you're going to have to be able to advocate for yourself and say, this is why I think I should have 12 years of credit, right? This is why I should have X amount of credit. And I think that, people are going to have to be educated to know how to do that.
Right.
Or, obviously, we do that for people, calculating it.
What's great is there is still the NSLDS file that you could still download yourself. We have a little converter that we use that counts up the estimated amount of months in repayment and estimated amount of months in forbearance. It will identify what months you were in deferment or grace period, if you just graduated, for example. So we can make some educated guesses, which is great because that gives us a ballpark on how much you should have. So we know if it's way off or if it's pretty close to what it should be.
Well, and with the changes going on in student loans, I think the way we should think about it is if you're going for PSLF, go for it just no matter what. If you're already at a not-for-profit or government employer anyway, if that's what you want to do in your career.
You like your place enough, or you could see yourself going to another place that's still eligible. PSLF still makes a ton of sense for those that are in that field.
And if you have even a little bit of credit already built in for PSLF, then just finish it out, right? That's because you can now do the capped payments on IBR. There's no downside to just doing that. For people in the private sector going for forgiveness, here's kind of how I've been thinking about it lately. I've been thinking if you're eligible for new IBR, if you owe more than you earn, go for the new IBR program, right?
Yeah.
And
that's 20 years for long-term forgiveness, and it's 10% of discretionary income. So it's still a really nice plan. And a lot of the newer borrowers have access to this because you borrowed, let's say after 2014. That's kind of the threshold, the year that we need to know about there.
Yeah. And it's if you are somebody who has borrowed a debt to income ratio that is, so if you're on the new system, right, and you're taking out the RIP loan max of $200K, let's say it's $200K that you leave with. I've been thinking a little bit, Megan, about who should pay it back and who should not.
We used to have, we used to say, some of our old, if you've listened to our old stuff before, it was at one point we said if your balance is 2 times your income, definitely go to forgiveness. And then we started dropping it because SAVE came out.
More generous stuff came out. Yeah.
And then it was
it was 1.5.
Yeah.
It was 1.5 for a while. And then it dropped with the SAVE plan. It dropped to 1.
To 1. Yeah. And if you had a lot less than your income in student loan balance, probably just need to pay it off. And now those rules of thumb have changed a little bit again because now SAVE is gone. We're having to factor in what the RAP calculations are going to look like, which the RAP calculation payment, it is similar to SAVE and new IBR. It's going to be a little bit more It's not capped. So the payment can be as high as your income is. But it's a 30-year timeline to forgiveness, which is a long time.
I think the way that I think about this is if you have a debt to income ratio above 1.5 to 1, and you're under the grandfathered rules where people can borrow for those 3 years after 2026, right? Like you're already in school, you're finishing out your program. I think that it's 1.5 to 1 debt to income ratio where people can go for forgiveness if they have more than that in debt, like if their debt to income ratio is more than that. But then I think that if you are in that 200K world of RAP, like essentially once people are fully borrowing under the rules of RAP, with you can take out 50K per year for professional school,
right?
20,500 per year for non-professional schools. So I think that, those people, I think it's more of a debt to income ratio. I think it's honestly a 2 to 1 kind of debt to income ratio. Like, I think that if you have less than that, you probably will need to pay it off. I think that a lot of people that are going to have, they're going to have, the RAP eligible loans. I think that it's not a bad idea if you owe more than what you earn to try to maximize interest subsidies for like the first couple years out of graduation.
Yeah, because there are still the interest subsidies with the RAP plan where you get a discount on interest. So if you just decided to go borrow private loans are not going to have interest subsidies, right? They're going to charge what they charge and that's what you're paying.
Right.
But RAP does have those subsidies that could be taken advantage of. And RAP is I still lean towards, it still makes sense to borrow what you can federal because there's still more flexibility. Like you still have the access to the income driven plan RAP if your income isn't what you thought it was going to be, or you have to take a sabbatical for some reason. There's more generous forbearance rules still when it comes to, needing to take time off from payments. There's still the death and disability discharge. Like that is not existent with private loans. So some folks might be thinking, well, with these new borrowing limits in the future, should I just borrow all private? Like, is it all just about the interest rate? And I think the answer is still no. It's not just about the interest rate at the end of the day, but you may be someone who is probably long-term going to refinance and pay off your loans.
Well, I think about this like at a higher level for the future of student loans. Like who should borrow? Who should go to graduate school? Who should go to professional school, right? Like I think that the reality is if somebody's taken out a bunch of loans to go be a dentist or a veterinarian or a lawyer, does that make sense at a base level? And the answer is yes, it does.
Yeah, it does. You're going to make more.
The only time it doesn't make sense is if you are really like struggling, like you're unsure what you want to do with your life.
Yeah,
like
you're not sure that you want to do that. You think you might career change later. Like
if that's you, go travel around Europe, like do what I did. Hit the backpack trails of Latin America, like go make some silly mistakes. Go surf down a volcano. That was the thing that people did when I was in Nicaragua when I was in my mid-20s. People were getting on like skateboards and like surfing down like a Nicaraguan like volcano or something. I'm like, that seems like crazy, but and I think you do that to get out all of your like angst and fear in your life, and you try to find yourself. And then if you find yourself, it's like, well, you're gonna commit to doing something in your career, right? You're not gonna commit to doing nothing. Right. So what do you enjoy the most? What do you enjoy about a profession? Do you think you would more often than not like the work that you get into in the profession, right?
You can intern, and so there, you could be a vet tech, see what it's all about, going into the vet office if your heart is calling you to be a vet.
Yeah.
You could go work as a receptionist at a dental office, like
a firm
or a law firm. Like figure out if that's what you actually want to do. Like test it out first, because that is a big investment.
Well, I think the way we have to think about the new rules of student loans is if you take out RAP max of 50K a year, you're going to need, most people are going to need somewhere between 10 and 30K extra per year. And so you're going to graduate your professional school program something between 50 and 100K on average of private loans.
Yeah.
That's going to be the new model. Plus the federal. The federal is still a percent of income. It's still 10% of income, so it can't wreck you by definition.
But you have to balance both payments, though. You've got the federal and the private.
So I think that the angle is attack the private like your life depends on it after you graduate. Pay off all the private loans, and now you basically have freedom. I guess maybe throw on a 6-month emergency fund.
Yep.
Right? Because I mean, I was like, when I was backpacking in my 20s, like there were people that completely ran out of money and they had nothing.
They had to go home or something.
Well, they didn't go home. They like found a hostel that would let them stay for free.
Yeah.
And they would like find, like, it was just funny. Like they would just do odd jobs like around the hostel for like a little spending money. And they would just stay in the hostel for like months until they like really ran out of money. Then they had to like call mom or dad to get a plane ticket home, what I mean, after they were desperate. But so I guess the thing is like, I think so. I think here's a thought, right? So many people are so fearful in their lives from all the changes in the world and the economy, right? Like, and people feel stressed. We're on our phones all the time. Like, we're dealing with social media stuff, doom scrolling, and it's not good for us.
Right.
And how do we have positivity in our lives? And how do we get some encouragement in our lives to say, hey, you know what? If you go to law school or vet school or dental school, like, as long as you don't borrow more than, let's say, 2.5 times your income, you know, you'll be fine. Like, we can help you. We can figure it out. Like, you might have to go through some periods of sacrifice to pay off your private loans, especially, but then you can,
but it's going to give you the life that you wanted.
Exactly. And you're going to have the flexibility to work 3 days a week if you wanted to in some situations, right?
Yeah,
like,
there's still ways to build in like financial independence, financial flexibility. Like, even if this structure is going to be a lot different than what we've experienced in the past.
Yeah. And it's like, what kind of life do you want? Like, if you want to live in, you know, DC or, you know, New York or something, maybe you're better off going to a top law school where big law is like, that's the center of big law, and you can get a really high paying job there.
Yeah.
You know, or and if you want to be, you know, in healthcare, like, maybe go somewhere, you know, where some of these podcasters say, go where they ain't, you know, like, if you go somewhere like, you know, I'm gonna never forget, like, we have all these orthodontist clients, right? And in Kansas City, you know, suburbs, they're making 400,000, 500,000 a year. In, like, you know, New York, they're New Jersey suburbs, and maybe they're making 250, right? And it's a higher cost of living area. So it's sort of like, you know, what kind of life do you want? And think about, do your professional school ambitions match the life you want, right? And that's a real mature kind of decision making.
Yes. It's a lot better than I think what we have had historically. It was like, well, I'll just go to school because people told me I need to go to school.
Yeah, like, I mean, if we think about it, like with the pharmacy schools that I always use this example because pharmacy school publishes a bunch of statistics that's transparent. And in 2003, there was like 43 pharmacy schools, I think, and it was a 34% acceptance rate, something like that. And then it grew to having like 140 schools with an 87% acceptance rate. Is it good that pharmacy school has a policy of, if you have a pulse, we'll let you in?
No,
I mean, no, it's not, because you're preying on people. You're preying on, you know, people's dreams and stuff. When maybe some of those people would be better off not getting into a field that they're not super passionate about, right? So I don't know. It's going to be, you know, a wild west situation with, you know, with professional school this coming fall. And I think that we can be helping people think positively about it, because it's the only constructive way to think about it.
Yeah.
You know,
we have to move forward. And it is going to be a confusing time, especially over the next 4 years, because there's rules that are grandfathered, but then there's new rules that come in, and we have to figure out, where do you sit when it comes to borrowing at that point. And
people are going to be in a hybrid situation, right? Like,
which is, you know, usually I love hybrid approaches because it means we've got like a foot in the door, we've got some options, but I don't quite love this.
Well, what's going to happen? What's going to happen is they made all the rules and we haven't seen the negative impacts yet. And usually in politics, when you see a bunch of negative impacts on things, that's when something changes, right?
Yeah.
So I think that if you start seeing programs close, there's going to be a little bit of a freak out, right?
There is, yes.
And then there's going to be a recession at some point. And then in a recession, the private lenders are not going to be able to make the loans that people need to go to the schools. And so at some point, right, you will see an increased, you know, an increased role for government again in the private, in the student loan market. As soon as Democrats have universal control of Washington, it's going to go back to a lot more similar arrangement to what the SAVE plan was, I think.
Yeah.
So I think people just have to take a deep breath, know that this is a time of transition. It's a time of stress for a lot of people, and know that there's going to be some negative outcomes for some people, but to know that, you know, ultimately you do have the power to make good decisions.
Yeah.
You know?
And you can make the best decision that you know to make today, and then make sure you've got ways to pivot too.
Yeah. And you know, when we look at people's finances, the vast majority of them are not coming close to optimizing everything, right?
Right.
Like they're leaving $100K in a bank account earning 0% or 2% or something.
Yeah.
They're
forgetting an old 401k account, or
they're not setting up
invested.
Dependent care FSAs for their kids to pay for, you know, daycare with pre-tax dollars, or they're
forgetting the 8606 form when doing backdoor Roth and having to redo taxes.
and they're not aware of their marginal tax rate. So you're working 5 days a week, but not realizing that you're getting taxed at a higher rate on that like last $1,000 of income compared to the first $1,000 of income, you know, right? So like a lot of people, a lot of times they've got a car payment or something. Hey, what if you like drove a 2012 Camry and had no car payment? You could work 4 days a week instead of 5, right?
Yeah,
so there's all kinds of positive thinking that I think people can do in their finances to optimize things. And also, you know, so many people are living in such fear, right? Like when I talk to a lot of the professional school people, I'm like, what if you went down to part-time, or what if you took a break from work? Would you be able to get another job? And then usually their answer is like, in a heartbeat.
Yeah.
And I'm like, okay, why aren't you using your power? You know, why aren't you using your leverage and your control that you have over your life situation to live the life that you want to live? We want to get, that's really our mission ultimately. Why do we do the Student Loan Planner podcast? Why do we keep coming back for more pain, you know, in the student loan market, right? It's, I mean, shoot, like true crime's more fun. I'm convinced. But like, you know, I think it's just like, it's because we love helping people achieve their potential and their calling in their lives. We love that. And we think more people deserve to live that. And you deserve to live that if you're watching this, right? So, I mean, any last thoughts on current state or future state for student loan borrowers?
Stay tuned. We'll continue to cover these things. I think it's interesting that schools are quiet. We talked about that.
Schools are so quiet. Lenders are so quiet.
There's no one talking about like the borrower limits that are changing. So there's going to be some like, I think stuff that's going to come out in the future that we'll have plenty to dissect.
So my last thought is just, this coming fall, next fall is going to be chaos for a lot of schools and
for schools and for people going to school.
And if you're an existing borrower, just know that you need to deep breathe, focus on your plan. It still works. You know, the strategies still work. It's only around the edges that we might have to have certain people, you know, pay off their loans, certain people not. And, you know, we can have those conversations if we need to.
We can make some pivots. Yeah.
Folks, if you have any questions you want to ask us, go to studentloanplanner.com/voicemail and ask your question. You can press the record button on your mobile phone and we'll love to get your questions for some future pod episodes. But thank you so much for listening to the Student Loan Planner podcast. And we hope you have a great rest of your week.
Thanks for hanging out with us.
Are you on the free Student Loan Planner email list? If yes, you could upgrade your experience and discover student loan loopholes so good, they might get repealed if I talk about them publicly. Find out my very best thought leadership that I really just can't be super open about anymore, unfortunately. If you want to get our very best tips, not just the ones that I can share for free, then go to studentloanplanner.com/insider to get a special discount for your year membership. That's studentloanplanner.com/insider and get our very best dozens of bonus content and tips that's going to save you money and get you out of student debt faster. And if you're already an SLP Insider, please reply back to those emails and let me know how I can make it even more valuable.